to the Talking to Myself podcast. I'm your host, Eddie, and that song that you just heard was the song E by Tricot, an all-girl Japanese band and a personal favorite band of mine. And that's not even their best song. You might think that I try to pick like the best songs from bands, but that's not even their best song. I just thought it fit better with the way that I want this podcast to be structured eventually. Today is September 5th, 2016, and I actually have quite a bit of business to get through today. It is currently 3:18 in the morning Eastern Time. It took me quite a while to begin recording this. Usually I try to record around 2, and then I can usually go to bed around 4 for my night shift at work. But I have spent the last hour fooling around with a new recording software. I was originally using Audacity. I shouldn't even say originally because I only have one podcast before this one. I was using Audacity and somebody turned me on to another recording software that I'm testing out. Hopefully, it is not a pain in the ass because that was one thing that I was worried about. Audacity has an incredible ease of use, and yesterday, which was the first podcast that I recorded, it was maybe the third time I've ever used Audacity for anything more than just like clipping a song and turning it into a ringtone. And the ease of use, I can just figure out how to do it in 5 minutes. So hopefully this program is equally as easy and lets me lower the dynamic on me saying S all the time, which is something that I noticed being a problem in the Audacity recording. And even though I know there's a way to do it, like Audacity is a pretty powerful program, for some reason I couldn't figure out how to fix it. Anyway, enough rambling. Our random weather of the day is a little town in Wales called St. David's. Today in St. David's, it is going to be 62 degrees Fahrenheit with a 0% chance of rain and a 97% humidity. It's pretty sticky out there. A little bit of wind too. It's not supposed to rain until late. It's supposed to rain a lot Saturday and Sunday actually. We're going to be getting a ton of rain. I thought it just rained all the time in the United Kingdom and Wales. So it's pretty interesting that today is almost equally as hot as it is here where I live. And that's your random weather for the day. So today I have 2 pieces of news that I think are very interesting. The first one being an opioid drug or painkiller like morphine or heroin or Diluadid, I believe it's called. There's a new opioid that actually effectively kills pain, and it actually apparently does not make you addicted to it, which is obviously a huge problem with opioids. And I quote, "According to a report in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, an opioid drug referred to as BU-08028 was able to alleviate pain in a dozen monkeys just as well as other opioid painkillers such as morphine, yet unlike every other opioid drug, BU-08028 showed no signs of being addictive. Even at a high dose, at which other opioid drugs would inhibit the respiratory and cardiovascular system, which can be fatal, BU-08028 was harmless." The biggest problem with opioids has always been its unbelievable addictivity. People who would go to the hospital and get put on a morphine drip for 2 days would already be addicted to it. They'd be absolutely addicted to morphine. And I've personally, not myself, but people who are very close to me have experienced this, and I've seen how difficult it is. I've seen family members and close friends who just beg for more morphine, even if they're not in pain anymore, which is obviously not good. Like, being addicted to anything, I'm addicted to nicotine. During this entire podcast, I'm constantly hitting my electronic cigarette, and that's not even really doing anything to me. That's just, in the long run, it might not be very good, but as of right now, it's not really immediately important. Opioids, stuff like morphine and heroin and Diluadid, that stuff, like, immediately, heroin, you hear stories about heroin where, somebody took their first hit of heroin that wasn't even it was like a watered down, low potency hit, and they die. They just die on the spot because you never know how that stuff is going to react. And obviously, morphine isn't that bad. Morphine is just weak heroin. That's all it is. And this new drug called BU-08028 could actually be something good. Now, there's a branch off of this that's really bad, though. Obviously, the ability to take a painkiller that you potentially can't get addicted to is obviously very good for people who have serious pain problems. But something like this it's going to be years and years and years before it actually gets out into the public and people can use it who have, like, back problems or knee problems and stuff like that, because they have to figure out exactly how much you can take. Because if somebody takes one of these a day, it might not do anything. But what if somebody needs 3 of them a day? What if somebody needs 5 of them a day? What if the next thing you know, somebody's going through a 60 pill prescription in a week, no problem, and how are they gonna? Well, I mean, I obviously know how they're going to figure that out, but it's going to take a very long time. And contrary to popular belief, monkeys actually aren't like exactly the same as humans. They're really goddamn close, and that's why we test everything on them. It's difficult to figure out exactly how drugs are going to react until you get the human trials. And something like this, I just don't know when they're going to be able to put it through human trials. You hear about cancer cures and HIV cures and AIDS cures all the time, but they never get through to human trials, which is the most important thing, because if they can't get through human trials, or even to them, they will never ever be used in a medical situation. Now, I could be wrong. The article that I'm going to link in the description does mention that it is very difficult to overdose on this. They basically say that they hope to test it treating chronic pain without risks of addiction or overdoses. Now, there's source material with this, the big long medical journal or whatever. I'm not even going to try to read that. And if you guys are interested in reading it, it is going to be in the article that I link. For those of you who are more medically minded than I am, you'll be able to go check that out. Because I'm looking at it and it's it's gibberish to me. It's just, I don't understand it. So hopefully me bringing this information in front of you pushes more of the medically apt people into reading it. Anyway, on to the next thing. I have another TV trope of the day. Or trope of the day, moreover. The one today is another thing that, just like the thing yesterday, if you listen to yesterday's podcast, which was harmless freezing, basically freezing somebody in a block of ice and nothing bad happens to them, the ice just thaws out and they're perfectly fine. Whereas if you did that in real life, they'd be dead, like automatically. If they were in there for more than 10 seconds, they'd be dead. The thing today, the trope page, is titled One Dose Fits All. This trope thread, or article, or forum page, or wiki thread, or whatever you want to call it, points out something else that, like I said, is exactly like the harmless ice thing, or the harmless freezing thing from yesterday. That just something that happens all of the time, and it just never clicked in my head. It just never, the light never went off. The ding didn't go off. The light bulb didn't appear. I'm just going to read off the tropes example that they give, because those always seem to be more apt than anything I can think of. And it reads, Alice has decided to murder Bob and Carol and serves them each a mug of poisoned coffee. Both of them drink their coffee, and then 5 minutes later, both Bob and Carol begin to dramatically cough and clutch their chests, each dying within about 10 seconds of each other. But hold on. Here's where the problem is. Alice gave Bob and Carol both a cup of coffee or whatever mixed with cyanide. It is the same amount of cyanide, assumedly, but Bob and Carol both die at the same time, roughly. But Bob is he's got like 80 pounds on Carol. Carol's like a little girl. Bob's a big guy. So they both die within 10 seconds of each other. That's not how poison works. Now, I personally don't know a lot about poison. I'm not a poison expert. But one of the more simple parts of poison is the fact it's the same thing as alcohol. If me, being a 6 foot tall, 200 plus pound person, if I, drank a bunch of alcohol, I would probably be a lot less drunk than somebody who weighed 80 pounds and was 4 foot 11. They'd probably be hammered, whereas I might still be buzzed. The same thing applies to poison. If somebody has 100 pounds on somebody else and they're given the exact same amount of poison, they're going to react to it differently. In this situation, Bob would probably be alive for at least a couple more minutes than Carol. Carol might have, a better resistance to the poison than Bob, but odds are Bob's going to take a little bit longer than Carol. Much like the trope yesterday, I'm going to post it in the description. TV Tropes has thousands of examples for every single trope that they have, and it's just always great to go through them, while you're sitting on the toilet, or you're sitting on a light, or anything where you just have like a couple minutes to glance at your phone. I do it a lot. I do it pretty much all day. Unfortunately, it's still taking over my life as of today. But we'll see if I can, kick this habit. This is probably worse than smoking. It's getting really bad. Send help. So let's get on to our event of the day. Today is September 5th, 2016, as I really hope you noticed I mentioned earlier, and is the title of the podcast and is basically all over this podcast. On this day in history, in 1984, Space Shuttle Discovery arrived back to planet Earth and its maiden voyage. You don't know what Space Shuttle Discovery is? It is an orbiter, it basically looks like a space plane. It's white, it has the black tip, it has the black things around the wings. And the cool thing about it is that it's reusable. You can send it into space on a big old rocket, and it's just attached to the side of it. And all of the first stage stuff falls off, the side rockets and everything. And they can do low orbit, and I don't know about high orbit, but they can do low orbit things with it, where like ISS is and stuff. And then they can just glide right back down into a runway, just like a normal plane. And this is really cool because rockets cost a lot, an obscene amount of money. I don't even want to say how big the number is. You can look it up. But you're pushing billions of dollars in research and development and materials and everything related to a rocket just to get it into space safely. And not to mention how much more it costs to build it in such a way that it can get into space safely and then come back down to Earth equally safely. Which was followed by Endeavour. Columbia lasted a long time. And Discovery lasted an even longer time. Discovery was actually the longest running orbiter of all time. It ran from August of 1984, and like I said, landed on September 5th of 1984, all the way up to February 4th of 2011, which is a gap of 27 years. It spent almost an entire year in space. And one of the coolest things that it did, it actually took the Hubble Space Telescope into orbit in 1990. I just wanted to mention Discovery because for some reason, all of the orbiters, all the American orbiters, I don't know if there are any for other countries. I would assume there are. Anyway, the American orbiter, Discovery especially, has always been something that defines space travel for me in a way. Just the thought of something going into space, and not even just something that actually looks pretty cool. If you go look at pictures of Discovery, it is a cool looking, little plane. Which is rightly so, because it's for space travel. Everything related to space travel is pretty fucking cool in my opinion. But just because it's so heavily designed that you can take it into space. There are astronauts sitting on it while they go into space, and they can fly back down. They don't even have to, use cool boosters or anything, or just free fall almost to their deaths into the ocean to get back to Earth. They can just glide back down onto a runway. Like they've been doing it their whole lives, they're so cool. And that's just been something that always just stood out to me in space travel. And for those of you who are curious, Discovery was decommissioned on March 9th of 2011 after 27 years of service and 31 launches into space. It's currently in the Smithsonian, I believe, which is definitely somewhere that I am really looking forward to going to one of these days, if I ever bother. So, let's get on to our movie of the day. Yet another movie that is on Netflix, because convenience is king. My movie of the day is It's Such a Beautiful Day by Don Hertzfeldt. If you don't know who Don Hertzfeldt is, stupid little quotes such as, "My spoon is too big," might pop in the mind. He is an animator. He uses a very cool technique in his animation. He doesn't currently do typical animation. He doesn't, draw things on a computer and then animate them through a program like, Blender or Maya. What he actually does is he hand draws everything he does. There's a tiny bit of digital aid in a lot of the stuff that he does, but the vast majority of his material is done traditionally with a piece of paper with a pen, and he just sits there with film cameras and records all of his drawings and creates animation with it. Just super old school. and it lends itself into all of his animation, all of his movies and little animated shorts, because much like shows like home movies or Dr. Katz, which both have like very unique. I can't remember the name of it. There's an animation style that home movies and Dr. Katz uses where everything's shaking and it like makes it look like movement. And it's just always interesting to watch animated movies that aren't, the typical Disney or Pixar or DreamWorks animated movies. It's Such a Beautiful Day is actually a compilation of 3 of his other short films that he made, which are Everything Will Be Okay, I Am So Proud of You, and It's Such a Beautiful Day, which was the 3rd part, and that's what he ended up naming the entire movie. It is about this guy he's essentially a stick figure, whose name is Bill, who is having mental problems. His memory is failing, and he's having hallucinations, and just a plethora of things, and it just follows him in his day-to-day life trying to deal with it. I will admit that it gets kind of out there in the third act. The fact that a dude managed to take hand-drawn animation cells and create an hour-long movie with it that actually kept me at rapt attention. I just could not look away from this movie for the entire running time. And it made me laugh. It pretty much made me cry at one point, and it just made me think. And I really hope that it makes anybody else who decides to watch it, based on my recommendation, feel the same way. Because for a 62-minute long movie that was made by one guy with, like I said, hand-drawn cells, it's insane. And he deserves every award that he gets, every Academy Award he's nominated for his animated features. And the movie received insane critical praise. And it absolutely deserves it, in my opinion. And also on Netflix, just as a side note, he also has another short film of his, it's like a half an hour long, called World of Tomorrow. I'm not even going to get into what the hell that thing's about, but go watch that as well. If you like It's Such a Beautiful Day, or even hell, watch World of Tomorrow first, just watch World of Tomorrow first, and if you like it, 100% recommend you watch It's Such a Beautiful Day as well. Because World of Tomorrow is a little bit more out there, but it also kind of feels like a little bit closer to than, especially compared to the 3rd act of Such a Beautiful Day. But either way, I recommend you watch both of them. Just take my advice. If you're sitting in bed tonight, after you get off work and you do the dishes and you mow the lawn, just sit down, throw on Netflix, and look up both of these movies. Okay. Oh yeah, one other piece of news that I wanted to mention is about a comedian that I've never really been on the bandwagon that some people seem to be with him, where, he's one of the greatest. I mean, he is one of the greatest of all time. There's no arguing that. But at the end of the day, I just thought he was funny. I just thought he was a funny, grumpy old man, and that was his shtick. That was it at the end of the day. He was in the dark humor, and he was funny, and that's all a comedian should be. George Carlin. If you don't know George Carlin, go Google him. I'm not going to explain him. He's an old man that likes dark humor. Or he was. Rest in peace. So, George Carlin, on September 10th, 2001, recorded a comedy special for HBO. It was called I Kinda Like It When a Lot of People Die. That's strike 1 for Mr. Carlin. Strike 2 was George Carlin telling a joke about somebody farting so hard that it blew up a plane. And he says, and I quote, "You know who gets blamed? Osama bin Laden." So, because of what happened on September 11th, he and probably his PR guy decided not to release it for very good reason. Very, very good reason. There are plenty of little stories like that, something that was supposed to be released around September 11th was actually never released because of something that was wrong with it, something that foreshadowed it. And there are several stories that I've heard about this. There are several bands who, would have had a song called, World Trade Center or something, or, had the World Trade Center being destroyed on the cover. Just crazy, weird things like that are just so coincidental. And I totally understand why, they decided to shelve these things due to what happened on September 11th, 2001. But that being said, this week, It is going to be released. The full special called I Kinda Like It When a Lot of People Die is going to be released on September 16th on Amazon and iTunes and stuff. This is a big deal for a lot of people because George Carlin is a really, really well-loved comedian by a lot of people. Me included, most of the time. And everybody's just fiending for more material from him. And I can't see the reason that I wanted to talk about the story was because literally just last week I was having a chit chat with my dad, and he showed me a video from that special of George Carlin telling that joke. Talking about 3,000 people dying or whatever. And just 1 week later, they're like, "Oh yeah, we're releasing that." So I'm like, "What a coincidence, man!" Like, can't believe that. And it happens with him a lot. Like, I swear to God, my dad he has like this like plug in to like when things are gonna happen, and he'll mention it. But at the end of the day, I'm pretty excited for a new George Carlin comedy special. See, because like I said, my dad showed me that thing. I don't know if you can find the full thing online, and I didn't bother to check, just because I was like, yeah, I might as well just buy it on Amazon when it comes out. So it might already be online. I'm going to look for it after this podcast, which is almost over. And if I find anything, if I find a full thing, I'll throw it in the description if you want to watch it, or if you want to wait until September 16th and purchases it off of Amazon and iTunes. I don't have any referral links for you or anything, so just do it of your own volition. And with that, I think I'm going to have to say goodnight. It is exactly 4 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, and I have to go to bed, so I have to edit this and throw it up on YouTube and SoundCloud as quickly as possible, or tomorrow's going to be a bad day. So, with that, goodbye and have a nice day.